So today's one of those fun conversations that I love, can never plan, but always just appreciate when they happen. And so today I'm talking with Tara Flores, who is an amazing artist, has done some beautiful things with Morse code, with flower essences, which was the impetus for this conversation. And I love when the guest shows up and they're alive with something, and we just follow that. And again, we can't plan that stuff because you never know what you're really going to be stimulated, triggered by, whatever that is. But today is one of those perfect opportunities to just explore what was alive with Tara as she walked in. And one of the things that was very alive with her is one of my favorite things to talk about that I don't think I've talked a lot about on this podcast, but it's when we get a case of the fuckets. And like, I'm doing everything that I feel is right in life. I'm following my passions. I'm not drinking to excess or utilizing substances to excess, or if any at all, but shit's still not going right. What the F? What is going on? How do we move past that? How do we rekindle the fire? How do we understand if there's a fire there in the first place? How do we get past our own frustrations and our quote unquote fuck it's and either say this is part of the process or I need to step away for a minute? And being okay with all that, being okay with the self and the honest answers that you get. You know, we're told so much to like push through and just drive on and keep going and, nose to the grindstone kind of shit, but when do we listen and say, well, maybe I do need to pause. Maybe I do need to stop. Maybe I do need to listen to the frustrations. Maybe that doesn't mean I need to stop forever, but does that pause create space for the creativity to be rekindled, for the new ideas to come in, for the frustration to be subsided for a little while? So as always, these are unscripted conversations, but here is a beautifully unscripted, unplanned, non-topical conversation with Tara Flores, and I'm so excited to share this with you. Hope you get something out of it. We'll see you on the other side. But first, this message. No matter how much we prepare, the holidays tend to stress us out. So this year, take a moment to reset and recenter with a grounding retreat in Costa Rica. Join Jeff Hawkins, Steve Wimmer, Cameron Nagashima, and myself, Adam Reel, for a one-week immersive yoga retreat at Blue Osa Resort, backed up to miles of pristine beach. Every day you'll have an option to experience yoga, meditation, relaxation, self-discovery, adventures, or your own personal free time. This is a time to build your peaceful practices before you need them. Take this time for yourself. Visit GarudaWellness.com for details. We have pricing options available, and if you pay in full by July 1st, you receive a 20% discount. Through the experiences offered, there's a lot of different ways to build your practice and approach this retreat. Take time to create space for yourself so you can hold space for others. Reset and recenter. Visit GarudaWellness.com for more information. That's Garuda, Garuda, Wellness, WELLNESS.com. GarudaWellness.com. And now an uninterrupted podcast with Tara Flores. All right, welcome back to our show. Today I'm joined by Tara Flores, a beautiful artist, an energy worker. We shared, I think we were just talking about this, our mastership Reiki level together with Hannah Talbot, and just, love connecting with people. And it's so funny because like Hannah reached out to me and said, hey, you should talk to this woman, Tara. And I was looking at your portfolio and all this stuff, and I'm like, yeah, no, totally. Like, this looks awesome. The way you approach art, all this fun stuff. And then, like, last week, I did more of a, diving deeper in, and I started seeing pictures, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know you. Like, I know this human being. Like, fuck, I'm, like, going into this, like, oh, I can't wait to meet Tara. Like, no, I shared, like, an entire weekend worth of energy work with you. So, it's just great to connect. It's great to reconnect again.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, we wanted to come on and talk about the beautiful artwork that you do, which we will, but when you came in, you were talking about some of the frustrations that you feel around following your passions, right? And I think we need to add credence to that. Like, we can't just always think that we're following our passions and everything's going to fucking line up. And, we follow this golden brick road of passionate fucking ideas, and all of a sudden we're just living on our best lives. That's like the idea, but a lot of times maybe we get there. I'm not sure yet, right? I'm still
Maybe.
traversing this path, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess what led you to the charge of the idea of like, I guess I call it the fuck it's, right? What led you to the fuck it's? Like, man, fuck this shit, man. I'm done with this for today.
Love that. Well, I'm hot off the heels of co-curating my first show, which took so much energy, and it was amazing. I curated a show called Wild Cure with my good friend Esther Loopstra in Seattle, and by all accounts, it was a success.
Mm-hmm.
We gathered wonderful artists. The opening was insane. So many people had great feedback. At the same time, we sold not that much. We did fundraise to fund the show, but we didn't pay ourselves.
Okay.
And it's to add up the hours that we put in just for funsies was kind of insane
Yeah.
to realize how much effort and energy we were putting out and not getting back in the end. Like, I have a family. I live over an hour away from where all this was happening, so the time was a lot, and my family's supportive, but it still took its toll. I
Right,
got
yeah.
little kids. So after that, I kind of took a breath and took a break and focused on my other company, which is landscaping. And in the midst of that, I kind of realized, like I said, it was kind of eclipse energy. It kind of just was all of a sudden that I didn't want this. I wasn't happy with going forward with the artist identity anymore. I kind of feel bitter.
Okay.
I feel kind of betrayed and confused because, as I was telling you, I've done this for a decade. I went to school for it. I tried to make it my career. Pouring everything I have into it, like almost like committed to failing
Right.
over
Yeah.
and over again.
Yeah.
While my family, needed me financially. And like a switch flipped. I'm like, you know what? This is not taking care of me. I need to take care of me in a different way.
Right.
So it was very unexpected.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I identified with quote unquote artist and the whole nine, the Instagram and the websites and
Right.
all the things, So it's been interesting the last couple weeks.
Yeah. It's we can't ignore those things like when they come up, right? The self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, it's like they're there for a reason, and especially when we've experienced a lot of frustration in something that we're passionate about. I was sharing this before we hit record, but for me, I changed my life dramatically in the past decade, from corporate, climbing ladders, alcoholic, numbing, no body movement work, no meditation, no breath, anything like that. Just moving as a cog in a wheel, if you will. Right. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, like, I mean, looking back, I wasn't happy. I know that I wasn't happy, but I was ignorantly blissful back then because I didn't know any better. I didn't know that I had an opportunity to feel my feelings. I didn't know that I could put the bottle of wine down. I didn't know that there's something bigger than me outside of me. And when I started to step towards all that stuff, I think there was a part of me, an ignorant part of me, that was like, now everything's going to be great, right? You've now quit drinking, right? You've got clarity. You've started meditating. That adds more brain matter, right? You're helping this brain cells you've killed. You're now more present with your kids. This is great, right? And all that stuff like sounds good on paper and it felt okay, but it also didn't really change the fact that I was still a miserable fucking human being. I just had better tools to deal with now, right? And so like I think there was this expectation of like you're saying, like following your passion, following your dream. It's like, well, I'm following my dream. Everything's supposed to be great. Like, where's the fucking, where's all the clowns and the happy shit, right? This is where it's supposed to be. I mean, I know it's going to be hard,
Yeah.
but this is like our dharma, right? This is our passion. And I think that's part of like the frustration about it is like even when we know that we're following our passions and our intuition and we're doing shit right, that that doesn't mean like it makes it quote unquote easy. There's still like the trials, the tribulations, the learning. And part of it, part of me gets really frustrated with that because this life I'm living now in a lot of ways is a lot more difficult to operate inside of humanity fluidly than where I'm at, right? And again, that ignorance, right? And you can call it being asleep, you can call it whatever you want to, but I romanticize about that life sometimes. About being asleep, like throwing that fucking eye patch back on, closing up the foil that you picked away. So like with art and with do you feel like this is a frustration part that fuels the artistic energy, or is this just like what the fuck am I gonna do with this?
I don't know that it I don't know that it fuels the artistic energy. I feel like that's an area that I don't have an issue with. Sometimes when I tell people like I'm feeling some sort of way about my art or being an artist, they immediately assume that like I'm not inspired or I don't know what to do.
Right.
I have the opposite problem.
Okay.
I have so many ideas. I want to do so many things. It's a matter of financing it or finding the time or, once I make it, where do I put it?
Right.
Like, will somebody buy it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
practical things.
Yeah. And having a business and a family and all it's not just you doing art. You've a lot of factors that go into this art. How
Yeah.
can it support? Am I taking funds away? Is this going to be something that can fuel potentially moving away from landscaping more into art? Is one taking away from the other? There's a lot of shit that goes into this when it's a passion project.
Yeah, I constantly felt like I was splitting my time, splitting my energy. And if, anyone who's a parent understands that you feel like you can't give 100% to your work, you can't give 100% to your kids, so you're just screwing both of them up. And whatever else is in your life, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like you constantly have to choose. I have a really hard time prioritizing things. Yeah, so for the moment, it felt good to consciously choose. I'm putting my all into this landscaping business that I started with my fiance. He's needed my help. He's asked for my help, and I've kind of tried-ish, but now consciously saying, yes, I'm in this with you 100%. Let's do this and make it work, and it's going really well.
Okay.
So that's another thing, like, why this is something that I didn't think of beyond a year or two ago, and it's easy and it's going well and it's flowing, and I'm like good,
Yeah.
but are you fucking kidding me?
Right. Yeah.
And maybe it's an ego thing too, but I always identified as an artist. Some people like, oh, I don't know if I could claim that title. I'm like, I feel like I put in the work, so I'm going to claim that title.
Yeah.
And I also felt like, following your passion wise, I felt ahead of the game because I had found it so long ago.
Right.
And so I held on to that
Yeah.
for a really long time, for better or for worse. But here we are.
Do you ever think that our passions play with us like that? Like to see how fucking like how passionate we actually are, how committed we are to the thing, to have it kind of yo-yo in and out, and like, because I've got friends like musicians, people in like yourself, right? You've had good success with the art that you do. You've had good feedback. You've sold big pieces. You've sold multiple albums. You've got platinum hits and all this shit. But you still see these people like fucking struggling day to day, and it's like, should I be a musician? Should I be an artist? Is people gonna like my shit? I know that's part of the process, but it's so interesting to see these folks that like I would put like, like my buddy Alan Stone, right? He's a beautiful musician. He's a great soul singer. He's been on tour with Chris Stapleton for multiple years now. He's got great hits and all this stuff. And when you talk to him, he's still struggling like he's about to cut his first demo. And that's just so interesting to see and hear and to witness.
It is so wild and so cliche. Like everyone, well, lots of people in my life who are not artists are quick to bring up the starving artist trope, which obviously I hate. Um, it's so
It's like
irritating.
poke the bear. Just keep poking the bear, man.
Yeah, I'm like there has to be another way.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be true. There's plenty of people on the internet making a great living, you know, with their craft or art or whatever. And that was another thing these last couple weeks that I was struggling with, like, is it true? Am I just another artist who's like, I'm just going to separate my art and my love of art from the business side and take the pressure off and not, you know,
Yeah.
need it to be something that it's not. But
Yeah.
I still don't understand why it can't be both.
There's an interesting book I just read called The Creative Act. It's Rick Rubin. You know, Rick, okay. The guru of artisticness, right? He just is a beautiful guy. Doesn't play a fucking single instrument. Admittedly knows nothing about music production, music theory, but is also one of the most prolific, profound music producers of our time. Wrote a book called The Creative Act. And in the way that he wrote this book, yeah, I loved it personally. I thought it was a fantastic book. It's kind of written almost like Taoish, you know, like short little chapters of like things to think about and pontificate about. But I've also talked to some friends that have read it and said that like how arrogant he sounded in this book, because a lot of what he talks about is making art for the sake of art, not making art for commerce. And I get that, right? If you can make art for the sake of art and like getting two fucks about who you're making it for, you're making it because you're passionate about drawing whatever you are, you know, painting, sculpting, writing music, right? And then the byproduct is what he says. The byproduct of the art that you've made in the most pure, beautiful way you can is people appreciating it because of the authenticity of it. And like I get that. That's beautiful, right? If you can make that, and that's awesome, right? But if you have bills to pay, there's a really tough part with that, right? And Monica, my former fiance, and I talked about this a lot because she also, you know, like I was witness to her artistic struggle, and she had great, beautiful ideas and there's different mediums she'd work with and all this stuff. And you know, when you're doing something that's not culturally norm, until it catches on, it's really weird to people. So my coaching to her was, you know, like, okay, so you love this. She had this map idea, right? She carved the United or the world map into plywood, put different gesso and paints and textures and all this stuff, and it was really cool texture and all this stuff, and people loved it. And my idea to her was, well, make them for the individual states, because people like, you know, they're from Washington. Oh, I'll put that in my den, Idaho. I'll put that in my fucking garage, whatever, right? That's a quick way to make a lot of money, you know, appeasing a mass audience. And then taking that money to then, you know, fuel those passion projects of the small stuff you want to do, right? But it doesn't always work that way, you know, because those little passion projects need to be done. Like they need to be out there, and like the generic shit that could fuel the money for the passion projects. It's like, I don't want to sell my soul for that, right? So this like this idea that Rick Rubin has, as altruistic as it can be, and like blue sky as it is, the reality of it is like, well, how the fuck am I going to pay my cell phone bill with this like beautiful piece of conceptual art that I love that took me 6 months to make, that probably took about $1,000 worth of supplies and however many hours of time, that is just going to sit in my garage until somebody appreciates it, you know? It's like, fuck, man. Like, where's the balance with that? How do we still fuel and get the creative juices going with these beautiful minds when they're not being supported?
Yes. Yeah. I talk with artist friends a lot, especially through the last show, about what it is about our culture that doesn't value art. It seems bizarre because everything is designed.
Yeah.
We have so many things around us. Everything has an artist or designer or creator behind it. I don't understand the disconnect. I mean, I know people are busy and stressed and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But it's funny to me that it's that point it goes unnoticed or unappreciated.
Yeah.
I feel like there's either, for the general public who would go see art, there's either people who think that it should just be free because it's an activity and like something to do in the afternoon or on a weekend, and that's as much as they think about it. Or someone who takes it so seriously that they think that it's so fancy and so extravagant that they couldn't possibly afford it or know enough about it in order to become a collector or whatever.
Right.
And there's just a few people in a very narrow window in between who are, I don't know, confident enough or certain enough or excited enough to be like, yes, I want that.
Yeah. Do you think that so the appreciation of art and the confidence to know that like no matter what somebody says about something, like I like that piece. Like there's something about that piece that calls to me, whether it's the colors, the textures, whatever, right? Subject matter. Do you think that there's a correlation between like the ability to understand your own desire to want and to appreciate something and the inability to have a conversation with somebody about differing topics? Like it seems to me it's like they kind of correlate with one another. It's like I'm afraid to actually step into my opinion and share my opinion, right? Because I don't even really know what my opinion is. So I see this thing on the wall that there's something that draws it to me, but I don't know what it is, and it's confusing. So I just kind of like charge it to the game, right? And it's like having a conversation with somebody about a differing topic of yours, and it's like you're triggered by that, by the opposite, right? Without even understanding why you're triggered by it, right? And so it's like these emotions just get brought up, and we're not really sure what to do with them. So like in the argument situation, the way we either just completely shy away from the argument or we just jump into whatever ignorant statement we have. And then similar thing with art, it's like, hey, I appreciate that from afar. I'm not going to try to figure it out. I'm not going to try to understand why I appreciate it. And I'm definitely not going to pay for it. But the fact that I saw it, check a box, right? So it's almost like we've shown up to do what we feel like we need to do, but we don't know what that next step is. Like, do I appreciate it? Do I take it home and appreciate it? Do I explore why I appreciate it?
Yeah.
Do I explore why this conversation just triggered me into some kind of way of ignorant thinking that I might not be aware of that I'm thinking that way? You know, it's almost like this it's like a symptom of the depth of thought that we're really afraid to step towards in a way.
Yeah, I think when people see art and they don't know, I mean, to me, it's okay. If people see something and they don't know why they like it, but they know that they like it, and that's as far as they go, that's fine with me. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm drawn to working in an abstract way.
Right.
Because you don't have to get it on an intellectual level. I feel like you feel it or you don't.
Right.
You think it's pretty or not. Like, I'm not offended if someone's like, ooh, that's pretty about one of my pieces. And that's as far as it goes. Enjoy it however you want to enjoy it.
Right.
Or don't, you know.
Yeah.
But for the people who are comfortable enough with getting deeper into it, having something there for them too, I think is really important.
Yeah. And the work that, I mean, and that speaks volumes to what you do, because like when I first was looking at your artwork after, Hannah and I reconnected us, I was admiring the abstractness of the work and the dashes in the artwork before I read about it reminded me of like scarification that some like tribes do, and they put it on their bodies and things like that. And it's beautiful, right? It's really pattern-esque, and it was amazing, and it spoke to me. And then after talking with you and reading more about your artwork and realizing those are Morse code dashes, again, that's another layer. Like, it was drawn to me for the thing that I thought it drew me there, but then took me deeper, knowing that there's a message in those dashes. And that's, the impetus of what drew me in was my recollection of this, comparing it to something else, but then knowing deeper and taking that next step to go like, what is this? And then reading about like the dashes, the prayers, the Morse code. It's like, well, no wonder you're drawn to this, right? You put your association with it. The drawing of the intuition was there. You justified it with your remembrance of something that made you like familiarize yourself. But then the deeper you went into it, the more you got pulled in because you felt it even more deeper. And I think that's a lot of the art that not only you create, but that's out there. It's like, we're drawn to whatever thing for a reason, but take the next step as to why.
Yeah.
And that's not just for to buy the cool thing on the wall or the sculpture, whatever, but also to like that teaches you a lot about yourself. Like, why was
Absolutely. Yeah.
I drawn towards that? Like, why am I always drawn towards indigenous art? I don't know why, And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like you realize it's indigenous art you're drawn to. Maybe you do some like 23andMe and you figure out you got a big indigenous background you're not aware of, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, no wonder I'm drawn to that shit, right? And that could open up a whole world for you.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So with like, how do you as an artist, as a mom, as a spouse, as all these things, how do you get past the fuck it's like, how do you integrate? How do you understand? And like, is it part of that process you're in right now?
Yeah. Well, the plan is to just stop. I
Okay.
mean, the plan is to focus on something else right now. I've been waiting for a really long time to finish a remodel to do a studio space.
Okay.
So there's a lot of pressures and things that I've been trying to juggle and push off and like, well, when I get to this point and I have a space, then I can do X, Y, and Z or whatever. So
Yeah.
it is also nice to just press pause on that as well. Take the pressure off, focus on something that's actually working at the moment. And then we'll see. Like, I will do the work no matter what.
Right.
That's not changing for me. I'm not mad at art or creativity. I'm just breaking up with artist
Yeah.
for the
Okay.
moment. In the way that it's been operating in my life,
Right.
you know.
That's as scary as that step might sound. That might be like, like it's when let's say we don't listen to our intuition telling us that we're overworking ourselves, right? And I'm working so much, and then it might show up as like, hey Adam, you look how sore your body feels. Like, you feel exhausted, right? Push through it, go to yoga, do all my shit. A couple weeks later, it's like, oh, maybe I'm starting to get a little congested, right? It's like, oh, I can't breathe as well, but I'm still going to keep going. And then following, a couple weeks later, something bigger happens, and all of a sudden something bigger happens, and all of a sudden here you go. You're incapacitated because you didn't listen to your body. This might be part of that whole intuitive, like, you need to take a break away from art to whatever reason, right? Fall in love with it, find a new passion, whatever it is. And this is part of that process of like, as passionate as you are and as much as you love this, you're also white knuckling this right now. And do you realize how tightly you're gripping this thing that you're passionate about? Here's a forceful way to let this go. Your subconscious is still going to think about this shit. Yeah, you're pontificating about like art, more like cool plant medicine work that you're doing, like all that fun stuff. Like, it's still going, but it's like you physically need to take a step back. And so, like, the universe, your intuition, however you want to fucking label it, is like throwing this intentional roadblock in Tara's way and be like, okay, just stop. Focus on the landscaping thing. You're going to be fine with the art, but you don't need to do that right now. And so here's a physical roadblock of emotions to stop that.
Yes, completely. And there's a lot of facets involved in what I created as being an artist. I have to show up on Instagram and post a certain amount of times and whatever, which I was never comfortable with. There's all sorts of different ways to be an artist in this internet age, and what kind of scenes I want to involve myself with. I'm outside of Seattle. How often do I have to get there? What do I have to show up to? Do I want to be associated with galleries and chase that? Do I want to be independent and, just run my own online shop? Do I want to stay with just paintings, or can I do prints, or can I do like an Etsy thing and get a little more crafty? Like,
Right? Yeah.
there's so many avenues and so many ways to relate to being an artist. And I just don't think any of those that I've explored are are working for me.
Mm-hmm.
Totally valid for whoever they are working for. But recently, in the way that I work one-on-one with people with commissioned pieces has kind of come to the forefront for me. And the term visual healer kind of feels best out of all of the avenues that I've come up with so far.
Okay.
So,
What does that term mean to you? Like, how does visual healer? I mean, obviously, the work that you do, and we briefly touched on the Morse code, the way that you integrate that into your practices and your paintings. But, like, how does that term change the way that you approach art or the way that you're approaching sessions, or does that kind of integrate into
I
it?
think it just names it.
Names
It
it,
wouldn't
okay.
it wouldn't change anything. But it's yeah, just kind of claiming that process, I guess.
Cool.
It's the most meaningful part, and most fulfilling part of my work that I do right now, I would say. When it's when you find someone that you resonate with and you're connecting and you're discussing something meaningful
Right.
that we collaborate on and put into a painting, essentially. It's it's kind of like Reiki, the training we did together, but in a visual way.
Yeah. Because you're creating something specific for and you know who you're creating it for. It's not like, I really hope this lands with somebody. I really hope like somebody gets the message I put into this.
Yeah, it is a weird thing to create something and then just send it out into the universe. Even
Yeah.
if someone, sees it on your website, buys it, you package it up, you're, grateful and they love it and with all good things.
Mm-hmm.
But never meeting them and just, sending it out into the ethers,
Yeah.
never to be seen again, it's a weird thing to
Yeah.
me.
I never even thought about that. Like the amount of people the different style, different people that you'll never meet that appreciate what you've done. And whether they know that you've done it or not.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, like how many pieces of art I've seen on a wall and I appreciate it and I have no idea where it came from, who did it, why they did it, what the story is behind it. But it's like, cool, I like that. The song you listen to on the radio, oh, that's interesting.
Speaking of songs, I have been thinking about like how much I find music so moving. I don't know how you couldn't. And I appreciate it so much. And those artists, what do they, especially nowadays, what do they get in return?
Right. Yeah. Pennies,
I-
if that,
yeah.
That the aforementioned friend Alan, is on, Spotify and all that shit, and millions of streams, all this stuff, and like to hear the checks these quote unquote superstars are getting from these streaming services that are making billions of dollars. It's embarrassing to know that, like, because I remember, so growing up in the, my main decade of influence was the 90s. Napster, LimeWire, streaming. It was like the early days of that. And I remember like Metallica coming on and like taking a big stand against Napster. And the whole music community was like, get fucked, Metallica. You sell millions of records. Like, you don't need this money. And maybe they didn't, but they were the voice that needed to stand up for the newcomers that are coming up that aren't going to get shit, that are not getting shit.
Yeah.
These people, they have millions of streams and get checks for like $17. Like, where's the value in that? Where's the motivation to keep putting out new, current, all this stuff that makes you feel good about what you're doing?
Totally. And I have kids. I have a teen now, and he's starting to want to go to see shows. And I feel so bad for his generation because unless you find someone who is like super local and just starting out, you don't have hundreds or thousands of dollars to go see these people live. And live music is amazing. It's, essential. So
Yeah.
it's a weird spot that art is in.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine and this is generational. I get this, and this is my perspective, and I get that. But I couldn't imagine paying. Like I had a friend that took his two daughters to Taylor Swift a couple
Mm-hmm.
months ago, and paid like probably between the three tickets, the night out, and everything was like probably $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
$5,000 to go see a fucking couple hour long show, right? That is in fucking sane to me, right? And
It is.
when you can go to like when we used to go to like these little bit like the Sit and Spin down in Seattle when that was still around and see these little fucking these hole in the wall bar these bands
Mm-hmm.
that were amazing that barely charged a cover, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to meet them afterwards and have a beer with them or something.
Yeah.
And all this stuff is like, just how far are we distancing ourselves from the ability to just be a part of culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? To be appreciative of culture, and then you get these people that are just like so upset when the system gets bucked. I'm like, the system is fucking crazy.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
we're and actually I have this in my notes, but like with the being an artist, especially being sounding like right now a very jaded artist at times, right? Now we have artificial intelligence coming around that can write a song in the sound of Biggie's voice in the tone that he fucking wrote in. We can
Yeah.
have Andy Warhol paintings done in the style that he was doing with his prints and all that
Mm-hmm.
shit just from AI. Salvador Dali paintings are coming out now. All this shit, it's like as an artist that puts so much thought into the creation of what's passionate inside of you. Again, we haven't talked about like what drives the Morse code ideas and the plant medicine series. Those are all very unique to you as a person. And now we have computer programs that are coming around that can just generate this type of work, right? In some kind of way.
Yeah. I mean, well, I kind of actually want to get Mid-Journey and play with it because it looks fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, I just, I haven't thought about it too in depth or gotten worried about it because I feel like, you know, there's always going to be a space for actual human participation
Right.
and appreciation for it, I'm sure. It might get eclipsed for a moment. I remember when NFTs were the thing, I would keep getting these DMs on Instagram like, oh, I love your work so much. And, a conversation back and forth, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to get this, and this. Do you do NFTs? Can I get that in an NFT instead? I'm like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the new version of my wife's anniversary. It's coming up and I'd love to give her. No.
Yeah.
So hopefully it runs its course. All the shady bits of it
Yeah.
run its course. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
don't
do.
know.
I do feel like I'm not an alarmist when it comes to AI in my personal approach to it.
Yeah.
And I do think there's a way that this technology will support us, whether it's art or commerce or whatever it is, however we approach it. But also, just looking at the past with humanity, humans love to play with new toys and they like to break them, right? They like to play with them in the ways like I can't tell you how long how long it took me to realize that my cell phone wasn't just a porn machine, right? Right, and I got it as a child, right? So it's like we're going to play with the toys, we're going to break the toys, we're going to do the wrong thing with the toys, and then eventually we figure out how the toy helps humanity. And we're like, oh, the whole time, this porn machine can talk to me. I can talk to people in Thailand and fucking China, right? So I do feel like it's a very supportive thing, but when things are new, when things are bright and shiny, they scare a lot of people, right? But what I do hope too is that with the more integration of things like AI in our natural world, and this is I know a big pipe dream, but hopefully it creates enough room and space for people to not have to work so much so we can start to explore more creative ideas. Like having the time, the patience, and the financial stability to know that your landscaping company is going to be good, you're doing all right, and you can justify putting 20 hours of quote maybe unpaid work towards your art and justify it, not feel bad about it, not write a story about, oh, I should be doing that, I should be doing this, because that's taken care of. I really hope that we can get to that. Like truck drivers, for example. Like my dad was a coast to coast truck driver for 30 years, put millions and millions of miles on his truck. Was he good at that? Yeah, he was fine with that. Can a computer drive from coast to coast? Probably. Now, does that create enough space for those people that do drive coast to coast to create, different way to generate income, whether it's in universal unemployment or whatever it is, so that they can maybe start doing something they're passionate about instead of sitting on a fucking air ride truck for, days and days at a time.
I mean, that is the dream.
Right?
That is the dream. And I used to think about that a lot, like that if we could just stress less, if we could go a little slower, if people could be less overwhelmed, and just even a little bit more in touch with what their passion is, and move a little bit more towards that, what kind of world would we have?
Right.
That would be amazing. But I mean, then circling back to, yeah, I did that.
Yeah. Right. I know, right?
And I am not less overwhelmed, so who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
That's a really good point, I'm a firm believer that there's no true failures if you can learn something from it, right? And there's, there's the frustration points where we do feel like we failed or we do feel like we're just wasting our time, right? And eventually we learn the lesson from it, right? But if in your example, right, where you followed your passion, and it's not, panning out the way that you wanted to, there's still ways to look at it. Does that, I mean, I've talked to people that don't even realize, one, that they have passions, or two, that they don't even realize that they're not living passionately. It's like you go to work, you take care of your kids, whatever cycle you get into in life, right? And if it is a grind for you, and if you are working to survive, which a lot of us are, paycheck to paycheck, multiple jobs just to fucking, just to pay your bills, where is the time for passion? Where is the time for you to explore what you're passionate about? A lot of people don't even have time. A lot of people don't even know that they can take deep breaths and calm themselves down, let alone go to a yoga practice or a CrossFit or take a walk with their fucking dog.
100%.
Right? So like we're in a world now where we're not even giving credence to the idea that there's passions available to people because we're so caught up in this race of stuff. So like we don't even realize we have passions or that we're ignoring those passions. And then when we step to the passions, we get kicked in the face because the passion isn't profitable enough to be passionate, and to take the place of whatever thing that we're trying to do. That's such a weird fucking cycle to be in.
It is strange. Yeah. It's really strange. When you love something so much and it brings you so much joy, and people appreciate it. It seems like we're checking all the boxes, but there's some restructuring to do. Yeah.
I feel that not as deeply, I don't think as you do, but with this podcast, I feel that, like this is, I love this. I love talking to people. Like we're talking about shit we didn't even have planned to talk about. Yeah. And that's amazing to me. That's human conversation. That's human interaction, unscripted conversations. Right. But as much as I love this, I don't make any money at this. I don't have sponsors. This is all the money that I put into the equipment, the time to rent this space, to be a part of this community, to, my time, not monetary time, but my physical time to edit, put this out, post, yada, Instagram shit like you talked about. And I feel sometimes like, I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this? And I think I need to ask those questions sometimes like we talked about, but there is like, I can see myself talking myself out of this very easily and having my corporate brain, do all the ROI shit that corporations do to see if something's worth, quote unquote, quantitatively worth your time, not qualitatively worth your time. But, and as frustrated as I get, and maybe one day this passion project will make some money. I've had to adjust the way that I approach it, right? It used to be weekly, 52 episodes a year. Now I'm every 2 weeks, 26 episodes a year. It's like, I can do that, but it is just so weird to think like, I'm going to give up the thing I'm passionate about just to focus on the thing that's just going to help me survive, which I get it. We're survivalists, right? But like, damn it. Why can't we do both?
I avoided that for so long. I was like, I would rather be happy with how I'm spending my time and just I'm okay with making the sacrifice financially and struggling a bit or a lot.
Right.
I thought it was worth it. I thought it was noble. I thought I didn't have a choice because that's who I was. and what I needed.
Right.
But yeah.
Did you make those choices before you were in a family in a deep relationship, or was this all like, was that all in the works while those decisions were being made?
Yeah, I started off at a liberal arts college and I dropped out and walked away from a full tuition scholarship
Okay.
to go pay for expensive art school.
Mm. What was your scholarship in?
It was just for grades and scores
Academics and stuff.
yeah,
Cool. Okay.
yeah. So I think I was committed from the time that I made that huge choice
Yeah. Yeah.
and moved across the country by myself and, yeah, I've been committed since.
Yeah. There's something that with the creative types that I've noticed, especially creative types that have like a spiritual background of some sort, whether it's religion, spirituality. And that doesn't mean like their art is fueled by their spirituality, but there's usually like a correlation between like the artistic mind and the spiritual ideas, right? And I do feel like I think maybe part of the journey in this life is to struggle with that, right? Is to struggle because we're going against like our cultural norms, our systematic norms that we have right now, to be part of commerce, to be a part of the wheel that the economy is moving with, right? And not to say that art and things like that don't fuel that, but they're not as big of a part as like your fucking internet systems and your communication systems, shit like that. So part of the thing that I've realized, and even with myself, like I've struggled with money my entire life, no matter if I was doing something I was passionate about or if I was doing something that like life was telling me I should do. Like I've always struggled with money. I've just never really gotten it like dialed in until more recently. But I think there is part of that. It's like, how bad do you want this, right? And it just feels like, I don't want to say this, but it just feels like there's like all these fucked up tests that are happening all the time. And the more that I start to read about like Hindu lore, like right now I'm reading this book, 100 Tales from the Puranas, and the Puranas are like the Vedas, esque type stories about like where Krishna came from, where Brahma and Shiva and all this stuff. And reading these like, seemingly 1,000-year-old stories and stuff, it seems like the universe fucks with people a lot on purpose just to see, right? To the point to where, like, one of the stories I was reading recently, like this sage felt wronged during one of the yugas the ceremonies he was doing. And so he decided to follow the person he felt wronged him, which was a king, and basically strip him away from everything, from his family, from his riches, from his jewels, from his clothing, from his castle, all this stuff. And then right when he was about to like make the king commit suicide, again, just following him and just, how much can I push you? How much can I push you? Finally, the gods came in and was like, hey, dude, I think he's had enough. He's lost everything. Don't make him kill himself, too, because that is a sin that he can't come back from. And the guy was like, yeah, good point. Maybe I should back off. And it's like, what the fuck, man? And this is like universal stories that have been told to children growing up for fucking hundreds of years. It's like, man, why does the universe like just keep poking us so damn much?
Well, if you think about it, like in an infinite universe, how many variations of fucked up stuff?
Right?
I mean, if we want to experience ourselves in every which way, things are going to get weird.
Yep.
Over and over and over again.
Okay, so let's say I've always thought of the universe as being old as shit. Let's say, like, I don't know how many lives I've ever lived, and this could be my first one, this could be my thousandth. But for some reason, I thought, like, I have this idea that the universe is old. I've done this a few times, right? This isn't my first go around, maybe 100th or something like that. And that's not saying it because of the wisdom I hold. It's just like, there's this feeling I have. What if this is like the second version of universe of existence? The second. And we still have thousands and thousands more. What the fuck is going on? It's got to get better. It can't get worse. Oh my God. I love this. So let's talk about the work and then the art that you're just doing right now that you're kind of jaded and still passionate about? Because it's fucking awesome. Like the art that you do is beautiful. Like
Thank
I've never
you.
seen it in person, but the website and the stories that you've written about, you know, the process that you have is like I feel it's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. So I work in that intersection of art, science, and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
When as I mentioned, I went to a liberal arts college first. I went to the University of Michigan,
Is that Lansing? Where's that at?
Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor. Okay. I grew up in Detroit. I was born in Detroit. Didn't grow up there,
Nice.
but yeah,
Ton of family there still.
cool.
But I didn't know, like, I didn't have a path. I didn't know what I wanted to do. All I knew was that I was into art and I was into science. I thought pre-med maybe. I thought whatever. I didn't really pay attention to the art school because it wasn't an art school. It was an art department at a liberal arts college, you know.
Yep.
So I tried this and that, like poetry, neurobiology. Like I was all over the shop. Absolutely no direction.
Poetry to neurobiology. Jesus Christ, that is a big spectrum.
Yeah. And I didn't quite find anything that was like coalescing into a path from, I would say, the academic science side. When I switched to an art school, kind of found that it was easier to get into the science and spirituality through that pathway.
Okay.
And I was always searching for a way to express the like the energy pattern, I guess, that was just always in my brain.
Okay.
And it took years to do that, and I finally found the, I guess, the energy burst that's in all of my paintings now.
That's interesting. So how long do you think that image was of like, God, if I could just draw it or explain it or paint it? Like, how long do you think that was kind of ruminating in your head for?
Since 2005.
Wow. Okay, cool. Wow. Know it.
I remember very specifically a printmaking class, and this my process doesn't lend itself very well, I guess, to printmaking. But
Okay.
I had this overwhelming urge to want to know on a molecular level how knowledge is transferred. Like we have emotions, but where, like, what is that? Like I want to see it.
Yeah.
What is happening when you tell me something and now I know it, or you treat me a certain way and now I feel this? What is actually happening inside of us? Atomic level, molecular,
Right.
like all of that stuff. So I had that sense and I wanted to see it, which is years later, one of the reasons why I got into Reiki. I wanted to learn about energy from the inside.
Okay.
I never had any intention of practicing, but just, you know, feeling that and,
Yeah.
and learning about. I wish I could see it. I wish I was someone
that's
who could
interesting.
see auras and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd love to work on that, but
Yeah, that's, you know, I have this idea that I've been working with my personal self for a while, and it's like quantum physics is an example for me. Like I don't understand anything about that, but for some reason I'm drawn to it. I still try. Like I throw myself at these books, these Ken Wilber books, and these fucking, you know, like old Carl Sagan books, and like all these like talks from, you know, Neil deGrasse Tyson and shit. And I like scratch the surface. Like I barely grasp like between wave and particle ideas and like the double slit fucking right. I'm trying. I'm trying my hardest, right? But there's this thing that goes in my head that like even though I don't understand it, it's like reading the manual to something. And even if you don't understand what you're reading, the knowledge is getting in there so that one day when it's ready to be regurgitated or you need that knowledge, it can come out. You know, and there's something with that. It's like even if you don't understand it, it's like you're reading the manual. It might be in Mandarin and all you speak is French, right? But it's getting in there so that whatever it does click, it clicks, right?
see, for me, quantum physics and how it's been explained to me, because again, I'm not a scientist. I
Yeah.
don't really know. I'm interested in it, but I couldn't explain it in any real way to anyone. But every time I interact with any information about quantum physics, it is like remembering. It is like it is like a verification of spiritual principles that you know intuitively. And so I think quantum physics is the instruction manual to our spiritual universe.
Yeah. Yeah. There, and that's a good point because it's like just approachable enough to keep people interested. You know, there's obviously people that don't understand it very, very well, right? But to the layman, it's like enough to keep us interested, but also enough to be like, but you can figure it out, right? But it's right there.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's right there. I almost get it. And I think that's part of that draws us to it. It's like, there is like that remembrance. It's like, this makes sense somehow. I just don't remember how it makes sense.
Yeah, there's enough to be reassured that you're on the right track. But if you were to like need to present it in some way to people who don't know anything, be like, I'm gonna need a little help with that.
Here's a YouTube video that I found that could help with that.
Yeah.
So did all of that kind of like, you know, all of that passion, the trying to understand, you know, does that energy burst idea, where did the Morse code kind of fit into that? Like, where did that finally like kind of start clicking?
So the first series that I feel like I hit my stride with and used the burst motif, I guess, was called Boundaries Lost and Found. And I was painting that while I was separating from my kid's father. And the whole series was about energies in relationship. What is me? What is you? Where do we meet in the middle? If we're talking about the atomic level, there's no hard and fast boundary. We're mostly space. Like, what is even happening here between us? And I did all of that, and it has the dashes. It doesn't have Morse code. When I finished, I think there were like 18 pieces in that series. When I got my shit together again through all the ups and downs and the relationship and starting over and all that, and I went to my next series, which is based on crystals, I realized that, with each crystal, there's different properties. So I wanted to incorporate that somehow. And so I studied them a little bit and came up with a phrase or titles for the paintings. And I just realized that if I'm going to go through the process of doing all these dashes and these crystals mean something, it seemed like it clicked one day. I was like, this looks like Morse code. And I can incorporate that in a meaningful way. So
I love that so much. You know, I've always been drawn to people that use word in their art, you know, whether it's drawing and a complete picture with different words and phrases. But the idea for the Morse code, like there's already messages in artwork, right? The artist is going to put their messages in there, whether they're purposefully or just because that's just the way they create. But to like purposefully put these messages in there, and whether you realize what you're seeing, what you're reading or not, and from my understanding, the messages are prayers or they're beautiful, like they're very heart centric or very well meaning ideas that are in there. There's like feelings that we can get from that, you know. There's that, and those are those things, those nuances that draw us towards something that we might not understand why. And again, sometimes it's purposefully put in there, sometimes it's an accident, but you know, like. There's the intention and the love that you put into those prayers, mantras, those dashes. That's so cool. Like that's such a great goddamn idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're there for people who need them, I guess. Like I was saying before, people can see these pieces and say, "Oh, that's really pretty. I really love that." But for the people who read the title and read the statement or the bio and have that moment of realization, like I was drawn to this, it's associated with this crystal. The properties of that crystal are X, Y, and Z, and oh my God, I really need that.
Yeah. And sometimes too, when you find out, like, when it starts to come to you why you're drawn to something, like you don't know why in the beginning, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh well, there's Morse code in there, and this is what that says. It's like, oh my God, this is of course, and that can strengthen our intuition as to like you did know that you were drawn to that,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, and then that's our humanness coming out and saying, yes, champion the humanness. Like we were drawn to that. We're not just trying to put something over our fireplace. Like there's a reason we were drawn to this
Yes.
painting.
Yeah.
And as simple as it is, like I actually have a Morse code example of that. You know, the theme song for Mission Impossible, right? Dun 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 dun. Apparently, dun dun is M, dun dun is I. So the whole song is Morse code from MI, Mission Impossible. I'm like, oh my
Amazing.
God.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that's so cool to like find those little Easter eggs in this song that I've probably heard since I was born.
Yes.
You know, for probably 40 years I've been hearing versions of that damn song.
Yes.
Here's a layer as to why like people are drawn to it now, because there's like a mathematical code in there that's drawing you to it, and that's so cool, like to find those things as to like why you were drawn to that.
100%.
Yeah.
I hope that my work not proves to people, but shows people and reinforces for people that everything is connected. That it's just, like I said before, energies in relationship, and what they surround themselves with, or what they focus on, or what they interact with, especially on a daily basis, especially in your own home, in your own space, matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Did your plant medicine series come before or after?
After.
Okay.
It's in the works, and there's so many. I've made so many tangents with
Yeah.
this. It's been ongoing for, I don't know, a couple years now.
Okay.
But I'm getting into new materials. For the last show, I did some wooden sculpture and digital projection work, which is really exciting. So just tons of different stuff now.
So what's your process for that? Is that like sitting with a type of plant medicine and then letting that inspiration take over whatever art you want to create, or is that like being inspired by a plant of sorts and sitting with that, and then it's like, okay, this is the inspiration that this philodendron has given me, or something like that?
My entry point into that was flower essences.
Okay.
So I just, again, like I did with the crystals, I chose what I was drawn to, and then kind of worked backwards and researched what they were all about.
Cool. It's a very Taoist approach. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, so I've just recently learned this, but apparently the Taoist tradition are where we get a lot of the properties from the crystals, like the knowledge of the properties of crystals from. Because apparently Taoists back in the day used to say sodalite. Okay, this is sodalite. Let's grind this up, and I'm going to eat it, and then I'm going to sniff it, and I'm going to inject it into me, and we're going to see what happens. And if I die, okay,
Then you
that
know.
goes on the list of properties of things to not do. And if I feel good, it goes on the property of things to do, right? So
Wow.
these Taoists for hundreds of years were taking all these different crystals and stones and all this stuff and grinding them up and ingesting them in different ways to try to find their metaphysical properties.
Well, appreciate you, Dallas. Thank
Right?
you.
It's like, holy cow, man. Like, that's good for you, right? So that's, in a way, that's kind of the similar thing that you're doing. A little safer, it seems like, right?
Yes.
You're still alive.
Yeah,
So.
I'm here. But it's a lot of the work with the flower essences. It's seen in retrospect, right? So I'm taking what I'm drawn to at whatever point in time, and working on what those flowers help with. And it doesn't always, it's so subtle, it doesn't always seem evident in the moment. But there was one blend that I started with in the summer of 2020, and I think it was called Surrender.
Okay.
And summer of 2020, I mean, that was a fucked up time.
There's a lot of stuff going on that summer.
However, I was riding high.
Hmm.
I was like untouchable for a time.
Yeah.
I felt great. I felt like things were flowing, and
There's a lot of art happening that time for you because since everything kind of shut down for a little while.
uh, not. I mean, I had the kids. We were on a road trip, seeing I mean, not
Okay.
really, but
Just living your best life.
yeah,
Just having a good time. Yeah.
yeah. And in retrospect, I was like, oh, that's when I was taking surrender. How about that? I need to order some more.
Right. Oh man. So are you so with your flower essence, your plant medicine series and using flower essences, are you still in the midst of developing the flower essence series? Are you moving through different types of medicines that you're drawn towards? If there's like different ones that are kind of present themselves to you?
I'm still working towards them. So, or through, yeah, I have a short list of maybe 8 or 10. And I've done some digital collage, which
Hmm.
I've then turned into the kaleidoscopic projection video
Oh, cool.
that I talked about.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I'd love to make paintings for each one. And I think I want to kind of switch up or evolve a little bit my painting style.
Mm.
So that's going to be a whole trial and error sort of thing
Yeah.
when I get back to it.
Does that excite you or does that make you scared or a little both? Just to change the style, the idea of changing your style.
It excites me. Like I'm very grateful that I have a process that is like tried and true,
Hmm.
and that I can get through easily,
Yeah.
and that I still enjoy. But it's, yeah, I think it's time to expand a little bit.
Yeah. It's I find that hard for me, but necessary also because I'm a very ritualistic person. Yoga classes I teach have um, like a structure to it, if you will, right? They're not always the same class, but there's a structure that I can piece things into, right? Instead of reinventing the wheel every time. Sound bath, same idea, right? Like I approach sound baths. There's not a set list I have, but I have arrangements in my head that that appease my OCD. That if I feel like all of a sudden I come back to Adam land and I'm like, fuck, I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what's going on. It's like, play this melody, play this thing, get back in your zone. Okay, cool. All that shit, right? But at the same time, like as much as I love the fact that those are there, I do realize that I lean into those a lot over the years and I get stagnant. And so it's terrifying to me. COVID was actually a big opportunity for me to change the way I teach yoga. My voice traditionally is the same tone and frequency as background noise. So my voice gets lost quite a bit. So when I was teaching yoga, hot yoga in these rooms with loud music, one of the studios I teach at has these overhead heaters that sound like jet engines when they turn on. So my voice just goes all the way down. And so for the first 5 years of my yoga teaching career, I was coached to speak as English was my second language. So I didn't have flowery dialogue. I didn't like use metaphors or anything like that. Not to say I do now, but it was like lift right leg, step through, crescent lunge. There wasn't like lift your leg, point your toe, turn your hip down, extend through the arms, because nobody would hear that shit.
Yeah.
So I just got to the dialogue, get to the point. Then all of a sudden COVID happens. We're doing yoga from our living rooms, and I got a microphone 2 inches from my face. And I didn't realize till my second class that all the shit that I used to say under my breath, not nasty shit, but just like jokes that I would go by like my friend that was like taking class and I would say like a funny thing, right? Because I knew that only they could hear it. Now all of a sudden all these people heard the shit that I was saying and I'm like, well, fuck. And I was getting feedback in a positive way of like, we really like what you're saying now that we can hear you. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
now how do I change that to where everybody can hear me when we go back into studios? How can I let that influence me without changing who I am? But and as scary as it was, there was also an excitement behind it. How do you project your voice without yelling? How do you get your point across, without like screaming at people, right? And it changed. It gave me an opportunity to change my entire style, which scared the shit out of me because I was already getting good feedback about what I was doing. But I was also felt drawn to continue to push myself now that I've realized this thing. So I think there is something. Yeah, it's like that personal striving, right? Don't rest on your own laurels, especially when you realize you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're always going to get to, if you work enough in the thing that you're doing, you're going to get to a point where you are confident slash comfortable, and then changing or kind of climbing to the next level, it might still be very uncomfortable
Hmm.
or a bit intimidating, but some part of you knows that you're at least more prepared.
Yeah.
So,
In that Rick Rubin book I talked about earlier, he talks a little about that with artists that have, a long career. And you could take Mumford and Sons, for example. They went from this very folky, acoustic driven, very successful, two, if not three albums in that style band, to their either third or fourth album moving forward has gone electric and gone more, basically changed their entire style. And they probably lost a lot of fans on the way there, but they've probably gained more fans too, right? So it's this kind of like this trade off of like being having enough guts to know that you need to do something different to appease you. And if people come along for the ride, great. But if not, you've done something that you needed to check a box inside of you. You can always go back and you can always, reform in some kind of way. But if you don't take that step, then you'll never know. And that'll be that if, right? And so I think that it's important to know that pivot's there and available for us. But also, like, as much as we're stepping towards that, and it's not cautionary, but just know what potential is there too, right? There's potential to, as you explore this new thing that you're passionate about, your first approach on it might not be the best approach for you, but you needed that approach to learn how you wanted to approach it, and also to get like people used to maybe the weird shit that you're doing.
yeah.
It's like, I've never seen anything like that before, and it's as weird. And I kind of like it, but I don't know what to think about it, so I'm going to step away. There's actually a famous story about the song, Outkast song "Hey Ya" that came out in like 2003. So when that song came out, it just changed a lot, right? At that time in the music industry, there still is this program. It's refined now, but there's this program that music producers and radio execs would put their music into this computer program, and it would pump out and generate basically saying how popular the song is going to be, like on a scale of whatever. And they put "Hey Ya" in there after been using this program for a number of years, and it like scored the highest out of any song that they've ever put in there. Like, it just blew, like it was basically like 100%. People are going to fucking go crazy over this song. So they put it out on the radio, and it flopped. It was horrible. People didn't know what to think about it because it was different than anything that ever came out, right? It took this old Beatles-style sound, but it mixed it with Outkast, so there's like some rhyming, some old school, but just all this like mishmash and shit. They didn't understand what to do with it. So a radio exec said, okay, we're going to try this out. And this is in a book called Habits. So we're going to try this out. We're going to take this song that we know is going to be popular, and we're going to sandwich it between other songs that we already know are popular. Even if they're different genres, even if we're playing the same song back to back, right? So one of the examples they put in there was like they would play Red Hot Chili Peppers' Under the Bridge, right? Very familiar song. People love that song. Then they would play it again. And then they would throw "Hey Ya" in there. And then they would come in with like Coldplay. Right? Another familiar song that people like, right? And they did this over and over again, different genres, country music stations, Reba McEntire, Garth Brooks, "Hey Ya," and then all of a sudden like Clint Black or something, right? And through that process, it familiarized people with the understanding of like, oh, I do like that. Because it's surrounded by familiarity, and it is kind of familiar even though it's different. And now you've drawn the familiarity in there for me. Now I like it. That whole process made that song one of them. Like, it outsold Beatles songs,
Wild.
right? It just through that process of finding your way to familiarize your audience with the weird shit that you're doing that they might like, but they don't know why they like.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's interesting that playing with the human psyche like that, and I think it's like that. It's that message that it's not that your art is wrong. It's just that it might be the wrong timing. It's not even wrong. It's like people just aren't ready for it because they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Like, if all of a sudden you threw like a 4D sculpture in front of me that like spun and did lights and I could smell and shit, like I wouldn't know what to do with that. I'd be kind of scared of that. I'd be like, what is this witchery?
Well, yeah, on a more basic level, I guess. Like, for example, if you're an installation artist, you can make amazing things. that doesn't mean that the average person has space for any weird setup you got going on, something that's huge or something that involves a lot of chords or like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, there are some things that just aren't easy for people, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
I think that's, maybe that's part of the acceptance of the human experience. Like I saw an art exhibit recently. I didn't see it personally. I saw it on the old Instagram, but this artist had taken an entire art gallery and turned it into a river. Like brought in rocks, brought in soil, bought like the whole like 10,000 square foot fucking art gallery made into an outdoor river, and that was the art. And people paying whatever money to go see that. Nobody can take that home. You
No.
can't take that home with you.
Yeah.
That's as soon as this art exhibit's done, that's going wherever the fuck it's going, right? And that's
And
just interesting to think about that too.
for sure, and from the perspective of the art industry, doing stuff like that is amazing to see. But as an artist who hasn't quote unquote made it yet, as an artist who doesn't have representation by a 10,000 square foot gallery, who can afford to truck in a bunch of dirty stuff into their space and then clean it up afterwards, and can afford to put on that show, promote it, all the rest of it, knowing that it's not going to be a financial return necessarily.
Right.
It might be a great thing for someone in that position, but for all the people who are not represented, don't have the financial ability to put something like that on, don't have the support, it sucks.
Yeah.
It really sucks that even if they have ideas like that,
Yeah.
it's so hard to get them into reality.
So where do you find your motivation now after we've had this conversation of, moving with our passions, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, like, and I know that you've said maybe stepping away for a little while to see if that like rekindles some ideas and some passions, but where does that leave you like at this point?
Well, I kind of feel like I'm still just smack dab in the middle of the plant medicine series. So I still have a bunch of ideas just ready to go. But I feel like stepping back to restructure how I relate to and can integrate the artwork and the nature. Like I spend all day outside in different people's yards, hands in the dirt,
Yeah.
dreaming up new spaces with plants and rocks and all the things, which is creative in and of itself. But being able to integrate the different parts of my life so I don't feel like I'm like I have to compartmentalize and split my attention
Right.
would
Yeah.
be amazing. And that goes for the energy work too.
Yep.
So the nature and the art and the spirituality.
Yeah.
Finding a better way to mix them all.
I think that's where those are those moments when we can find like the way that all those weird, random, seemingly random, like passion projects or things that we just like love for no reason, except the fact that we love them, they find a way to coalesce into this thing, this actualization moment, right? It's like quantum physics talked about earlier. Like I don't know why the fuck I keep bashing my head against quantum physics books, but I am, and I'm trying my hardest. And I've been a musician since I was 13 to zero to little success, right? I was a corporate person for a long time and had a lot of understanding of like corporate budgets and structures and hiring and firing and all that shit. I was an audio engineer for a number of years back in the day, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff that's like seemingly random and weird and all in its own space has now finally come together in this weird way to present itself into this podcast, the energy work that I do, the sound healing that I'm part of, the whimsical nature of this quote unquote woo woo world. My corporate structure of my previous life has added a layer of organization to it that that has helped me immensely be successful in the business side of this, right? And so it's like we don't know when or how it's going to work, but all of a sudden one of these days, all those weird things are going to come together into this thing that only Terra can do, because Terra has been amassing these modalities, informations for however many years, right? And then it might go away. It's like this fleeting moment of like, cool, you've realized, okay, and now it's gone, right? So what's the next step for you? You know, and it's interesting to see that nothing is random, even though it all seems random. And I think the last thing I'll say about that is there's a book I read a while back called The Art of Impossible. It's by this guy named Stephen Coulter. And it's basically the science of the zone, like in the zone or getting in the, oh gosh, what do they call it?
Flow.
The flow state. Yeah, thank you, flow state. And he talks about like the science that they've done as the research as to, you know, what the process is one of the overarching things that happens right before flow state hits is immense frustration. Like immense, like ungodly amounts of frustration, because your body and your mind just aren't getting it, and they know they should, and they know they want to. They know they want to speak the same language, but it's just a different dialect, is slightly off. And that frustration is the impetus, the tipping point to say, take the deep breath, lean into it, figure it the fuck out, right? And so it's like that frustration is needed, right? And that sucks, because we don't want to be frustrated, but it's like the frustration that's like drawing into what you're feeling right now about, you know, whatever story that's going on, whether it's a live story or a story in our heads. It's like that fucking white knuckle, don't understand life frustration that might be the thing that finally ticks it over to say, but this.
Yes.
You're like, oh,
yeah.
this,
Well, you need the trial and error to know what the fuck you're doing. And you need to do it for long enough to hit that spot of, wow, this is flowing right now. This is going really well.
Yeah. That's a very powerful statement. Yeah. It's like sticking at it. Like you, even though it might not be paying off, you're feeling like a draw. You're feeling like success in some kind of way. Maybe not the, you know, overarching societal success, right? But it is those trial and errors, and that getting comfortable with the information you're using and the modalities that you're working with, and like all of a sudden the bursts become dashes and the dashes become Morse code, and it's like, of course that makes sense. We follow in that bouncing ball towards this idea.
Yeah,
you know?
as artists, we're told a lot that you have to make the shitty art before anything else.
Yep.
So just get it. It's like running the tap to get the water hot. You just gotta let it. You gotta let it happen.
Yep. Write the stupid, you know, sing-song lyrical line that you can get out of your head, so then you can write something prolific right after it.
Yes. Get the bad teen poetry out of the way.
It's so many times, like, especially as a former songwriter, I used to get frustrated as like, that's all I got. And then I would just get frustrated and walk away. It's like, no, that's what you had to get out of the way so that the other thing can come through.
Yes.
Oh man. Well, I'm so just happy to be able to talk with you, and I'm sorry you're feeling the frustrations of art right now, but at the same time, like, I really hope it fuels that passion to get you over that tipping point, because like what I have seen of what you do is beautiful, you know, and I really hope that, you know, artists don't get jaded with their idea of success or lack thereof. You know, just as much as teachers don't get jaded with their idea of the school system right now. There's so many fucking great teachers that are just stepping away because of the frustrations. And it's the same thing with the arts. Like, so many people are stepping away from art because, you know, it's like, where's my return? How do I survive? I can't even do whatever I'm doing now that I'm getting paid on a regular basis from. You know, so I really hope that we can figure this out to where we can support the creatives in whatever way that is, so that we can still be creative, because that's what makes this place fucking awesome, you know.
Agreed. 100%. Well, thank you so much for having me. Glad to reconnect.
Yeah, same. Well, before we sign off, where can people find you?
My website is terraflores.com. I'm on Instagram, though less so at the moment.
Yeah.
At terraflores art. And I'm gonna keep making. I haven't quit.
Yeah.
Just restructuring.
That's good. You know, we got to voice our frustrations too. you know, so we're not just sitting on those.
Yeah, I mean, and not to jump back into another 5 hours because we have to go, but people don't talk about the bad stuff enough. People don't talk about how much money they're actually making, when I would love to know, because I am sitting out here feeling like everybody else on the internet's making money when
Right.
I'm sure they're not.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's good to talk about.
it is, and my similarity to that is podcasting. You know, like
Yeah.
I, in my head, like everybody's Joe Rogan, and I'm just like fucking just like recording on a 4-track over here. It's like where's my sponsors?
Wait.
But at the same time, it's like, you know, it's like I've got to realize that I'm in my own process and I'm in my own world of this, and you know, if I have an expectation, then I need to explore it. But you know, that's mine to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm deeply grateful, and we'll leave links for ways to get in touch with Tara in the show notes, and I hope you continue to find your inspiration. And I look forward to having you back.
Same. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with Tara and I. Please check out the show notes for ways to get in touch with Tara, to see or to support the artwork that she's doing, and to understand a little bit more about her approach. Well, basins and love. We'll see y'all next time.